Hi everyone, my name is Greatzel and I'm Team 404's Client Liaison, Testing Lead, and Documentation Lead. So, as far as being a Client Liaison and Documentation Lead, nothing has really changed. It's the same emailing and communicating with the client, setting up Zoom meetings, and it's the same documentation where we record our meetings via Zoom. And for testing lead, though, I was able to do something, and I will show it to you guys. For now, I'm going to show you what I'm doing as client liaison and documentation lead. So for client liaison, well, we communicate with our client through email, Outlook. We set up our meetings. We usually meet every Thursday at 6 p.m. every week. But after the spring break or towards the spring break, Jim has had a change in schedule. And he did offer other days that we decided, you know what, we want to meet at the same day, but if at the same time, and if we did that, it would be bi-weekly at that point. And we decided, you know what, that's fine. So here's an example here you go. So this is an example. Luckily, I work at GGC, so I get to use some premium features of Zoom. So our meetings can go for more than 45 minutes, and I can take a video of the meeting. So I schedule the meeting in the actual Zoom website or GGC Zoom website, and then I download the calendar, the Outlook calendar file for it, and then I send it to everybody who's supposed to be there. As for documentation, it's been how would I say it? It's been a challenge this semester because there's a lot of projects that I need to do, and it's really difficult to sit down and write things down, essentially. So I'm very thankful that just recording our meetings is sufficient. So over here is all our meetings so far that we've recorded, which will be available in our Teams folder or Teams files folder. So as far as that goes, that's what I have done. Now for testing lead, I've actually done this before the sprint started, I think. So our project, it's a challenge because when we received the source code, it wasn't a it wasn't an actual project. It was missing some assemblies, some libraries, so we couldn't run it as a complete program. One of Jim's suggestions was to, well, if it, and also he wasn't able to provide us with the missing assemblies and libraries because some of those were from the company that he used to work at, so he wasn't allowed to bring some of them with him to provide to us, and that's fine. What we did though was use a partial functionality of his source code, or what I did was to use a partial functionality of his source code, basically just running the test case using an unit. And this is where it started, and this is how it's going. So as you can see here, there are 16 files, and they're all JSON test specifications, and they ran perfectly fine. But over here, it says 0/21. This is just a screenshot, by the way. So if you clicked on this over here, it would show all the XML files that failed to run. And that, and it's over here as well. You can see the XML files at line 40 upwards. And that makes sense because we were not provided with the XML file. We were only provided with the JSON file. So this is what I was able to accomplish. I think it was right around when the sprint started or before the sprint started, although this was not a part or a subtask in our sprint in Jira. So I guess that's maybe one of the mistakes we've made or I've made. But I was really happy that I was able to get this one to work at the very least. The purpose of this is to basically make sure that the code is still working fine, at least, even though we can't run it as a full program. All right. Now, in terms of the actual sprint and in terms of our project, this is what I have done so far. I actually need to run it over here. All right. So what I have done here is I mostly did the connections or configurations between all the views into the controller. So something about ASP.NET that you need to know is that using HTML within the framework can be slightly more complex than what you're used to. You would think that, oh, HTML, I've done this before. I click the HTML file and I get to the page and I reference another HTML file using an href, but it's a little more complex here in ASP.NET. So one thing you need to know is every view needs to interact with the controller first. And let me give you an example. So when I was working with this is the index. So let's go to the index real quick. So I was working with the index. So for this to be able to show when you run your program, you need to make sure that over here, let's leave that out for now. Over here, you have this code block. As you can see from line 12 to 15, you're saying, okay, I want to be able to return an action result, and I will name the method index and I will return a view. So returning a view means returning one of these. Now, if you do not specify the name of the view, then it will automatically know that, okay, what's the name of this method? It's index, so it must be the index that I'm trying to return. That is how you are able to show this HTML file. If you do not have this and you run your program, you will not be able to see your HTML file. It will say, oh, I don't know what we're looking at. There will be an error. So everything has to go through the controller. So this is one of the things that I worked with. And before I continue, I also want to say that it was such a challenge to figure out how to reference a JavaScript in an HTML file. And I know what you're thinking. I've done that before. I know how to do that. And we thought so as well. Turns out in ASP.NET, you need to use the Razor framework. It's slightly different. It kind of looks like JavaScript HTML, but it has a lot of helper methods that would supposedly make it easier for you to develop a website. And this is actually how you do it. So after like weeks of trying to figure it out, this is how you are supposed to reference a JavaScript, an external JavaScript file in your HTML file in ASP.NET MVC. So that took a while. At first we thought, okay, maybe it has something to do with the bundles because we couldn't get it to reference. And the bundles here, I wrote these over here. The bundles, their purpose is to make your web page load a bit quicker. Instead of loading a file individually, they're put into bundles and loaded together. And that apparently makes your web page load faster. All right, so that's one of the things that I did. If you go back to index. So after the index, I also did some manipulation in the layout. So as you could see, layout is under the shared folder. And that's exactly what it is. It is shared. So if you look at all the other code, it says here layout view shared layout underscore dot cshtml. It's referring back here to layout. And that's how we get some consistency in our website. That's why it looks the same no matter what tab or link I click, as long as the HTML view is referencing layout. So this is an example of the razor. It's slightly different from how we link our websites or our HTML files together within a website. You put the name of what you wanted to show, the the text that you want to show, the name and the name of the file. And you're saying, oh, this is from my home folder. So that's what I did. And this one is for the bottom tabs of the test specification right here. And above over here is the how-to that I also made some changes to. All right, so now after the index that I've done and manipulating the layout, I've also worked on the how-to. Here it is. Currently, these links do not work, and I'm still figuring out why. It's probably because I forgot to connect them to the controller, but I'm working on it. So this is what I've written, and except for these inside here, because this is from the README file from our client, although I am trying to write it on my own words, but at this point we just wanted to save time to do more of the coding. So this is what we want it to look. There's a how-to teaches you how and what each tab is supposed to do, input parameters, coverage group, expected results, and this is just a holder for now. About is basically who we are and the team, and it shows everybody, including our client Jim over there. And I know you guys have seen this before. I just reused it. And the contact, oops, I missed one. So resources. So resources also teach you about the theory of category partition method, and there are also videos in here. Now we didn't select this ourselves. This is given to us by our client, and we thought, you know what, we're gonna put it in here so it would be a lot easier for the user to use our website, especially if they have resources, right? So another thing that I did was I wrote a coverage group class. So this is still a simple class with just some traits for the name and the parameters, a constructor for the coverage group, a set of parameters, and a validation to make sure if there are input parameters within there are input parameters within the group or not. So this is referenced from Jim's code. This is the only um this is the only model class I've worked with in this sprint, but that's also because I was working with the front end of coverage group. So our team, by the way, is working on this. We're working together, but in different features. And since we're using MVC, it's not very difficult to do something like that, like a separation of labor of some sorts. So this is what I've written, the coveragegroup.cs. Now I actually haven't put this to use yet. I tried to, I haven't tested it. But let's move on to the coveragegroup.html. So this is a form that sends the data through method post. And I'll give you guys a demonstration. So what happens is when I add this over here, when I click submit coverage group names, the data will be sent into the controller over here. And you will be able to see it inside this string. And before I go there, I should also say within the controller, after I get the data from post, it will return an add members HTML. So if you remember, I said over here, okay, if I don't specify the view, then the controller knows that I'm returning the index HTML. But over here, I did specify the view, so it knows to load add members. So if I go to add members, this is what it is, and this is what it looks like over here. Ideally, what is supposed to happen is when I put group A and group B here, and when I submit this, it should also show group A and group B, and I should be able to add the members of group A and group B inside this coverage group. So right now, this is still hard coded, and I am working on that currently. But let me show you how the data goes into the controller. So to do that, I would have to debug. So I'll show you. All right, so we'll put a breakpoint line 45 and line 46. Then we'll run our code. All right, now I'll go to coverage groups. Let's say I'll have three, right? A, B, and C. And I'll also show you one of the problems that I'm encountering. I'm encountering some sort of problem with getting data from document.element by ID, this JavaScript line here. And I also have to remember to show you the JavaScript code that I've written. So, all right. So when I click this, it stops here, and I run it. Now, if you look at if I hover group name, it shows me the group names, the coverage group names that I've written, group A, group B, and group C. So this is what I was able to do. And I was so happy when I was able to do this because it means that I was able to successfully make the HTML communicate with the controller. Now, all we need to do is use the data from this controller and create an object of coverage group, and we can duplicate this method to our other forms, input parameters, expected results, and conditions. So I'm very excited about that. So that works. Wonderful. But now the problem that I have had is, let me just continue this. The problem that I've had is in my HTML, I also wrote this JavaScript over here. And what does this JavaScript do? Over here. All right. So the JavaScript is responsible for doing this. When I add group name, I could add as many group names as I want. And I could remove as many as I want. Here's the function for adding, for removing, for submission right there. All right. This is for the member script. So when I hit this, it still okay. All right. So this is for the member over here. So add members works. This works, but the remove does not work currently. So I'll have to look into that as well. And what I also want to show you is over here, it says array is null. So it's something in this line here or here that I'm making a mistake because I cannot get the data. Maybe it's just these quotation marks. I actually haven't done the one quotation mark, so I hope that will work out. I hope that will fix the problem. And that is basically all for what I've done in our project. I'm over slightly by 4 minutes. I hope that's okay. But thank you so much for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed or learned something. And good luck for the semester.